could let Hal and Tim know, this is sort of the program of excellence method of development started by provinces, and they have 8 teams try out a zone camp to create one provincial team down the road. And eventually the goal is those players will play World Junior or National Women someday. But they're getting a pretty decent start, Tim. I wonder if you could talk about your role, because we've both been in that capacity for a number of years.
Yeah, basically that's it. Hockey Alberta has been doing it for a little over 20 years now. It's really the first step in the program of excellence. Like the coaching staff I'm mentoring, like we're selecting. There's 2 teams from Southern Alberta. Like 2 weekends ago, we had 8 teams, 160 players from Central Alberta, and we picked 2 teams from that. And then there's a city team and a Northern Alberta team from the north, and a city team from Calgary and a Southern Alberta team. So we'll all get together, 6-team tournament at the end of the month. Basically, it's Western Hockey League draft age guys, 14, just turning 14. So pretty good skill level, pretty good group. And so we have a coaching staff of 3. We've got basically a team manager, they call it DOPS, the director of operations, and obviously a physio or an AT. And I'm sort of the mentor of the staff, just providing advice and, making sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed from Hockey Alberta's perspective. So it's been good. We have a fabulous staff, like really good staff, and pretty good team, I think, too. We're going to have a pretty deep team. Our high end won't be as high as some teams, but it's good. So we're pretty excited. It's a fun process.
Cool.
Lots of Zooms.
Hal, you got your hand up.
Hi, good morning. I'm curious, do the players have to pay to participate on these teams?
Yeah, they do, and I'm not sure the exact details. I think it was like $150 or something for the tryout weekend, which was basically I think each team played 4 games, like one Friday, 2 Saturday, 1 Sunday for the tryout weekend, and then if you make the team, I think it's $1,600 because they have, 1 full day of team training. Then it's basically a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday event, sort of 4.5 days. And I think to go to the tryout camp, you're committed, if you make the team, basically to participating, although they give you a chance to back out, but I don't know, there's some kind of basic commitment that if you make the team, you're committed to the $1,600 to move forward. So
that's similar here. I'm doing the 17 girls, and that was $100 for them to try out in our district, and we had 34 kids, and they got 4.5 hours of ice time, and then now the next group, and we've got to cut down to a team. It's interesting here. They don't let the coaches have any input in terms of who's picked for the team. And so they got some people sitting up in the stands that pick the team. So all we do is just run the ice time. And then it's $250 for a festival that we're going to next weekend. So we get 3 games for $250. And then from there, I'm not clear. From there, I think they go, if it's like the boys, they have another level of 52 kids. So they have a couple teams, and they compete, so they got to pay again. And then they select kids to go to the national camp from there.
Yeah, and our groups, like the 6 teams, so 120 guys, they would be the core group. for inviting people to the U16 camp for Alberta this summer.
Okay.
That's the next step in the process is Canada Winter Games, which they have sort of every year, or is it every 2 years? I'm not sure. With a U16 team, and if you didn't get selected, you're injured, or you had something else going on, doesn't mean you can't be. And you weren't in this process. It doesn't mean you can't be in the next part of the process. But it's interesting you mentioned the evaluation thing, because I know Wally would be interested to hear this. Like, we had it's a pretty sort of, I guess not heated, but energized discussions with Barry from Hockey Alberta on sort of the process of evaluation at the selection camp. Because basically so there's two team staffs. We're team black, team blue. So all the coaches were required to, submit a evaluation of who they thought their sort of top 5 forwards were, top 4D were, after each game. And each team could have one sort of outside evaluator that they brought in just to help with the evaluations.
Sure.
Which is it's a good process, but there was very little, like, we could do whatever we want within our own staff, but I tried to suggest to Barry that really our job as two staffs is to make sure we get the best 40 players.
Right.
And in order to do that, perhaps, obviously the top 10 or 12 or even maybe more than that would be pretty easy to pick out. But getting the depth players, there was no interstaff discussion about ratings and rankings after, like, the first game on Friday.
Yeah.
What we did was they have a draft at the end of the weekend, so each team drafts their own team. So it's a good learning process for the coaches in terms of developing a team identity and developing sort of a scouting profile of what you're looking for. And Barry just said they've had way too much trouble in the past with coaches not being willing to share information and opinions because they're trying to save the best kids, or maybe there's a diamond in the rough that we love that we don't want to reveal to the blue team. It's totally ass backwards for me. Like, we're there to serve the kids and pick the best kids.
Right.
And Hockey Alberta, by sort of, I had this discussion with Barry, like, by giving in to the fact that the coaches are too competitive and they have trouble with a sharing process, you're just supporting the whole idea that they're in it to win for themselves more than they're in it for the kids. And it was kind of upsetting on lots of levels. We're not done with that yet, and there might not be a perfect process, but I really felt like on the Friday night, we should have all got together and said, okay, who do we think the top 20 kids are today?
Oh.
And who do we think the next 20 kids are?
Right.
And then who do we think are the next 15 kids? And it didn't have to be a long, hard discussion, because after one viewing, there'd be maybe, but anyway, it's an imperfect process, but it's an interesting process and a fun one to go through. You would have been frustrated as hell, Wally.
So I've got this team picked, and I've got the roster, and I asked if I could get a depth chart from the evaluators. I want to know who the top, rank the forwards and rank the D. No, they don't tell me. And, they come from different schools, so I don't know these kids. I don't even know their names. Because I didn't spend enough time with them. And I'm going, well, this will be interesting. And so I will meet with the team an hour before our first game, and we're going to build the lineup, I guess. I'm going to let the kids help out with it, because ironically, many years ago, with the good Bantam team that we had, that went to the nationals, I asked the captains before tryouts to write each of them on a piece of paper, write down who they thought should be on the team. And not to tell me, but we folded it up, put it in an envelope, and we looked at it after tryouts. And it was almost 100%, except for 2 kids. And in hindsight, the players were right. We made a mistake as coaches by taking 2 players and leaving one in particular off the roster. And it had to more do with culture and personality than it did skill, because as you know, you get to the bottom and it's, you want guys that are there for the right reason and won't give you trouble. And of course, the 2 that we did take gave us a lot of trouble. Their dads gave us a lot of trouble all year long. And so, I sometimes think kids have a better idea. They know who the players are and who the goofballs are.
Yeah, I know, Tom, you want in here. I wonder how that might work on the female side though, Hal, like when they're more concerned about getting their best friend in and the person, the teammate they like the best, not necessarily the best player. But go ahead, Tom.
Well, the best process I've seen is everybody was ranked, according to what they'd done before. And then there's groups of 2 evaluators and they have 5 kids each. And everybody is, they're ranked like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And you got to watch those 5 kids, and you have to move the best player in there up. If you're in group 3 up to group 2, and group 2 has to move their weakest player to group 3. And it's encouraged that there's movement the whole time, so that, if some kid is really, maybe he's in group 6, but he's definitely the best player. After about 4 times, that kid should have moved up to where he belongs. So, that was the best one I've seen. And then as far as players, ranking things, I asked my team to give me the name of 5 players they thought would be good captains, and they gave that to me. And then there was one player that only got 4 mentions, but she'd kind of impressed all the coaches with, being at the fall camp and all this kind of stuff. And so we named her an assistant captain. It was a total disaster. Should have listened to the kids. So, just like Hal says,
good to know.
Listen to them.
Yeah, I think that really is important to listen to players in today's world. 25 years ago, we could kind of just do what we wanted to do, I think. But, I think kids are smart. I think they know, like, if I get this job that I've applied for on the girls, it's a potential state tournament caliber team. And they got a really good core. The coaching staff blew up at the end of the season or something happened. But, my approach will go in is I'm just going to listen to these kids for a while, and at least the captains, and figure out, what the dynamics of the group are all about. And you have to be a little careful, obviously. But these higher end girls are, they want to win just as much as the boys want to win. Right, Sammy? Good morning. And so, anyways, it'll be interesting.
Sammy, we've been talking about high performance evaluation at zone camps in Alberta. And Tim's working on the guys' side, and Carla and Jordan are working on the women's side. If you're picking a team and it's a female game, what are the kinds of things you're looking for? What would be the traits that you would be looking at and weighing heavily?
Well, I'm curious, when you say high performance, is that like a U17 or U20, or what is it, Tim?
Oh, the group I'm mentoring, it's basically the WHL draft kids. They're just turning 14.
Okay.
Carla's, I think, Wally, Carla's would have been U16 or U17 probably, or
I think U16.
yeah, preparing for winter games, I think, on both sides, sort of.
And so have you narrowed it down to a selection group, or is it the final team now?
Well, just really quickly, like Hockey Alberta has a competition every year where they, like I was just working in Central Alberta. We had 160 kids, 8 teams. We picked 2 teams from those 160, and that was going on in the north of Alberta, the south of Alberta as well. And there'll be a 6-team competition at the end of the month for a weekend. So basically, the 120 best kids supposedly in Alberta in that age group.
Amazing. Well, Wally, I don't know that I necessarily can add to what these incredible coaches probably can choose and select from, but I'm excited to listen and to hear how all of that plays out. I think if I'm evaluating or choosing at that level, part of it is, 95% of it is development, and who do I feel like best fits the culture that I want to create. So that's my 2 cents, but I'm sure that has already been said and can be talked about. But hi guys, and thank you for including me.
And Wally, it'd be interesting to get Carla on, and I might have to call her and just compare notes on how their evaluation process went, and whether there was any sort of inter-team discussions at all. It's a bit of a tricky area, but it'd be a really healthy and productive thing to do, I think.
I just wanted to mention, Sammy, being involved in the national team program, I've always said evaluation for development. So when I ask you the traits and you ask coaches to evaluate traits, you're asking them to think outside the box about the player that sticks out in what way, for what reason, and project where they might progress to as a potential Olympian on the female side. So my concern isn't the team that's picked. It's the coaches being educated as they pick the team to develop the players picked to become the players they're capable of.
I'm really curious in an evaluation that size, and I'm sure all the coaches have been in this situation, how you get to see any of those traits. Do you even get to meet the kids off the ice? Do you have really a ability to be in a drill and hear what their comments are? I mean, are there, besides the on ice physical attributes, can you assess off ice? Is that even possible in that group that big?
There's a lot going on off the ice, but you're always in touch with the trainer, the therapist, assistant coaches are involved in off ice activities. So is the head coach at times. And you do have to take those behavioral things into account. And I know it's a little different story, but Jordan with his club team last year, he basically picked the team, obviously looking at talent, but he prioritized the character, the behavior, the social mix of the group, and that entered the picture. But you're absolutely right. That's the importance of selecting it, and you're trying to get everybody to become a good team player and to put in the effort required and pay attention to detail and respect the process. And so when you're evaluating, and I think like Tim mentioned, the coaches are competing to pick the team to beat the other team so they can look good. And that's the simplicity of the process, when you can almost pick 2 equal teams based on your selection and pick the name out of a hat of the one you pick, which I think is a better process because the coaches would have learned something about what they were thinking and why they were selecting kids. So with the provincial team, that eventually there'll be one male provincial team and the female side, one on the male side, female side, and they'll go to a national championship. The exercise now at the national championship, from an evaluation point of view, is to have those coaches of the provincial team rank their players before the tournament and then rank them after the national tournament. And this is where you find out who can really deal with the adversity and the challenges and the pace at the highest level. So the process, it is, the outcome is what's driving it, but the underlying factor has to be how we're developing the coaches in the process to pick up on the broader picture. So I don't know if that helps or not or confuses things, but I think the mindset usually coming in is everybody knows their own thing and they're going to stick with what they do, and they get offended if you mandate the process. So to some degree, I'm curious about Hal and Minnesota hockey or USA hockey who don't let the coaches evaluate. And I think it's an important part of the process to get their information, not for decision-making sake, so to speak, but so they're discussing things about what are you thinking and rationalizing and why. And then you go away from every meeting with a different outlook and a broader degree of awareness of what to look for in developing a complete player, which ultimately for the national team in the women's case and the NHL draft in the guys' case is the ultimate. But it's an interesting process. I think the provinces have invested a lot of money in it, and it's still got a broader focus than the USA hockey approach. I think they've centralized their U18 teams and are picking from that and able to do much more specific work with a target group and make really incredible process with those athletes. But I think on the guys' side, we have 3 regional national teams that compete in tournaments. It's more about development than it is immediate results. And in the end, we hope it makes for a better process. So, Tim, I don't know how this sounds to you. Is it Greek for your minor world? Tim Taylor.
Yeah. No, you guys are talking about a different level of evaluations than I would be involved with here at the minor hockey level. Just a glimpse on what our organization does. They had 14 U evaluations this week for the coming season. Looked like there were 40 to 45 kids on the ice. The head coaches for the teams have already been announced, so the head coaches are up in the stands making their selections, and then there'll be 3 or 4 assistant coaches plus the hockey director on the ice. Kids do a little bit of skating, some horseshoe drills, and then pretty quickly go into some scrimmaging, but pretty standard stuff.
I don't know. Tim, a friend of mine, took over a novice program many years ago. And he actually, I thought, had a masterful way of evaluation. And novice is, I believe, U8 or U9, I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
And very experienced coach who had the fortune of coaching, and a number of players I coached were living in the district at the time and just outside of Calgary called Springbank. And they used this methodology for player selection. And the result was amazing in terms of the end result at the end of the year, but the process was more important than the result. It's why they got the result. They created 3 stations on the ice and evaluated skill at one station, compete, character, work ethic at another, and hockey sense, any decision-making ability with the skill they had. And they mixed the kids up the first day in all three stations, so you had the very best. And they kept moving the kids up that were the more capable, calling them the Eagles. The Hawks were the middle, and the Falcons were the third group. But they moved between the middle, mainly moving upwards. And in the end, they picked their teams, and the association wasn't too receptive to it because many people get on the board to make sure their kids are ranked at an appropriate level for their kid to play. And they stuck with their guns, and they created 2 Division I teams because they had that many good players, they felt. And they received a lot of pushback, but still, they ended up winning, I believe, 8 of 10 minor hockey week championships, and the 2 Division I teams played in the city final. And a tribute to the proper selection process, which leads to development, because they were aware of whether those kids were in those capacities and had to develop them at the ability they were at and take them to where they could be. Interestingly enough, the following year, they didn't get their jobs back, and things returned to normal, and the process was sort of lost sight of. But it's something that's, I think, it isn't really rocket science. It's just a matter of taking an objective approach and looking at it a little more detailed and trying to be a little more objective than you have been in the past in terms of generalizing. So, anybody else, any thoughts